Hi, I'm John Buck. I just wanted to thank Tim and New Stoics for letting me do the topic for today's video. Something that I really admire about Stoicism is that it's a philosophy that's grounded in practicality. It really aims to help people deal with living life. Now, the provocative title is not meaning that no one is an idiot, we're all special in our own way. It's an attempt to reconceptualize who we might normally call idiots, since many times in life we have to interact with them regularly. And for some reason it astonishes us just how little common sense that others seem to have, and we tend to become frustrated with them, as well as with ourselves for having to deal with their idiocy. But why do we consider them idiots? I look to nature and I see the ants, the beetles, and the birds, all of them with little to no cognitive reasoning, and yet it would seem quite silly for me to actually consider any of them as being an idiot. For instance, ants behave quite orderly and have efficient systems for relaying information and sending out more workers, but they still can be susceptible to errors because they're running off of simplified information in order to have an interaction with reality. They might follow the pheromones of their sisters to go out and to and from the mound, but occasionally that trail leads back onto itself, and numerous ants end up following each other's trails in a circle. That's called the ant mill, where they go around and round until they die of exhaustion. It's really interesting to watch. You might want to search for it on YouTube. Now, are the ants idiots for falling victim to their own evolutionary insufficiencies? No, certainly not. And thankfully, we might have several more points for comprehending reality than ants themselves do. So we should hope that where certain insufficiencies we have in our own practices can be spotted and aided by our other sense-making faculties that we have. Now, why do we judge those of our own species as idiots much harsher than those of all the other animals? Now, I'm putting forward the position that no one is an idiot. We are all merely insufficiently prepared for many differing parts of interactions with reality that we usually come across. Thankfully, we are trained by others in how to deal with regular experiences that we might have, but much of the time we're facing altogether new scenarios that we were not fully prepared for. It's in these circumstances where we'll likely rely upon our past theoretically similar situations and use whatever happened to work before, again, here in the present. And it might work occasionally, but many times those instincts end up being incorrect, or they merely push away negative consequences off into the future or onto other people later on that they'll have to deal with eventually. And this is where we would typically be considered an idiot by most. But by understanding that none of us can know the future or change the past, all mistakes were made from the best resources we had available to us at that time. And by seeing that we've made a mistake, it gives us now a chance to modify our flawed previous understandings of reality. So, what can we do for those that we see making these mistakes? Well, for one, getting mad at them will likely not help the situation much, because from their own perspective, as they were making that mistake, they were perfectly rationally justified in their actions within that position of time. Whereas now, you, by having an added knowledge of what the consequences to that action actually turned out to be, you have the cognitive advantage in comparison to their past self, in order to realize that they made a mistake in the past. The future makes wise men of us all. But it's just ridiculous to get mad at things that we cannot change. So if your intention is to make sure that this action does not occur again, negative reinforcement through anger is non-ideal. It only ensures that the behavior, if committed again, will be hidden from you in the future. What will be beneficial is to explain to them why their actions or conceptions are insufficient because of the negative outcomes that will arise through their using those actions or cognitive shortcuts that they have. And if you give them a replacement method for solving the attempted task that they were trying to attempt, that they were trying to complete, in such a way that can be memorable for them. This way, they don't have to lose a semi-effective tool for action, but can now gain a more effective tool. So what we call an idiot is likely just someone whose life's past experiences has insufficiently prepared them for their current circumstances. There's nothing that we can blame them for. Because why would we be rationally justified in expecting someone to behave differently from what they are currently capable of? If you see idiocracy around you, remember that this model of reality that they are using is the greatest possible one that they have in their possession at this time. And it's what they use for resolving all of their contradictory needs and knowledges into something that's sufficiently useful for them to act upon. You don't need to deconstruct their entire worldview just in order to get a single point across to them. Instead, it's more your job to, it's your job, essentially, your problem that you've recognized, and thus your responsibility to try to resolve. It's your job to make your point comprehensive within their particular lens of understanding things normally. Because you too are running off of models for reality that are likely incomplete, as we all are, since none of us are omniscient. And it might end up being the case that they happen to have certain frameworks for understanding that you don't. So it might be an intellectual exercise for you to try to produce your point in such a way that it fits within their framework. Since they won't be able to see the resolution to the problem on their own, it'd be a good practice for you to try to translate your solution into a way that they'll be capable and willing to accept and then act upon into the future. Now, of course, usually we are justified in our expectations of each other we're expecting them to not behave idiotically because they've likely shared much of the same cultural and educational upbringing as we all have. And so there's usually a greater touchstone for making connections with people and like expecting them to behave according to what we consider the normal or correct ways to act. So maybe just to go back, why would it be my duty or your duty to help those that you see as making idiotic mistakes or speaking idiotically or something like that? Well, since you are the only one that's noticing this error that they're making, and they're obviously unaware of some better method that they could be using, since you are the only person that is capable of essentially, you're the only person that is capable of fixing the problems that only you yourself can see. That's why this is your problem, since you're the one that actually saw it and notices that it's a problem, for you to attempt to solve. It's a purpose that you can have, because it's the purpose that's right there in front of you. This idea somewhat stems from a passage I read in the Tao Te Ching that stood out to me. What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? If you don't understand this, you will get lost, however intelligent you are. It is the great secret. So, from what I get from it, it's insofar as you want to be a good man, you must work to help those that need it. And insofar as you want to stop being a bad man, you must seek out learning from those that can actually help you. Anyway, hope this all helps. That's all I have for you. Hopefully some of what I said can be a helpful model for dealing with people you don't understand or disagree or might disagree with, and maybe give you a different perspective for you to use with your interactions with idiots. So thanks again to Tim, and I'll just plug my Twitter and my YouTube channel. It's writer John Buck. So memento mori and amor fati, everyone. Thank you.